Hi everybody, this is Nathifa. Welcome back to my studio. I'm going to jump in and show you the supplies we're going to need for our project today. So the first thing I want to show you is the Distres watercolor cardstock. You can cut this down to 8.5 by 8.5. We're going to use the envelope punch board to create an envelope. So if you don't know how to do that, I have a video on my YouTube page showing how to use that, or you can just create an envelope like you typically would create an envelope. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to need. We're also going to need some just regular black cardstock, just a regular cardstock that you find at the craft store. And then we're going to need this Dina Wakley stencil. And I have the actual stencil name in the description box. This is what we're going to need. Kind of a little like wave, and I feel like it's mermaid in scales, kind of sort of. I think it's perfect for summer. And we're going to need the stamp set. It is Abstract Florals, CMS 479, and it's just really fun. There you go. And we're going to be embossing. So I have my embossing ink from Ranger ink pad, and then I have the embossing powder from Ranger in white. Next, I have my Distres Crackle paint in translucent. We're going to be needing this. And I've got some palette knives that I am going to use. Just use whatever you have. Ranger has a really great set that I have linked down in the description box, so you can use those. These are white and theirs are black, but they're pretty much the same. And then I have my Distres inks that I'm going to be using today. And I have these colors. These are Dusty Concord, Picked Raspberry, and Spiced Marmalade in Distress Spray Stain. Super vibrant and delicious. And then I have the same colors in Oxides, Picked Raspberry, Dusty Concord, and Spiced Marmalade again. And just some other random things like scissors or heat gun, whatever you have, and some glue. Just basic stuff you have in your studio typically, and then we'll be on our way. So those are all the supplies we're going to need for today. So if you want to grab those and jump in with me, I will show you how I created this super yummy and delicious envelope for summer. Okay? All right. All right, folks. So the first thing we are going to do here is to cut out our envelope. As you can see, mine is a nice big square, but you can use whatever size you want. I'm just going to fold this in just to make sure I can see my crease lines before I start adding some color to this, so that when I want to add my texture paste later on, I can kind of know what I'm doing. So next I'm going to grab my colors. I talked about what colors I was using before. You can see them here. And I'm trying to do some sort of like gradient type color mixture. I don't know. I started out with Spiced Marmalade, added in some Picked Raspberry, and I used a brush and water just to kind of move that color around, and added my Dusty Concord at the end. And I kept adding colors until I got the effect that I was going for. So once you do that, you can go ahead and dry your envelope. Or if you're making a card, you can just dry your card. You don't have to do an envelope with this one. You can use this technique to do a card as well. And once you do that, make sure you clean up everything. And then I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to just add some spritz to it, some like little drips to it in the same colors. Kind of layer that on top of the base of the envelope. And then I'm going to dry it to make sure I get those very specific drops and drips that I'm looking for. I also used a paper towel to kind of mop up the excess because I was getting impatient. It wasn't drying too fast or fast enough for me, so I went ahead and did that. After that, I'm going to use the stencil and my Crackle paint, translucent Crackle paint, to add some texture to this. Now, I would like to tape my envelope down and tape my stencil down so I can get that stencil nice and flat so it doesn't move, just sometimes. So I go ahead and I'm doing the flap here with the Distres Crackle paint. I'm moving on to the sides, and you'll see me do just the flaps in the beginning because I want to just make sure that I have my flaps, and then I'm going to let those cure, and then I'm going to move to the center of my envelope. You want to make sure this cures so you don't smear it, because it's just going to create an entire mess. And I'm not in favor of that. You will not like that either. So make sure everything cures. It's pretty dry before you fold everything in and move it over, and fold it and move on to the back of the envelope. And you'll see me do that here. So I'm going to set this aside to dry, and I'm going to grab some black paper. We're going to work on our florals that we're going to be adding to the back of the envelope. And so I am just cutting down some black craft paper. I'm grabbing my stamp set that I talked about. I'm using a stamping platform, but you don't have to. You can just sort of, just stamp your embossing ink onto the paper, and then go ahead and use your white embossing powder to add that powder to the paper. And once you're done with all of them, you can go ahead and use your heat gun to cure that and kind of melt it down. I'm using 2 flowers from this set, the really big one and the kind of the medium-sized flower, to kind of create this little mini trio bouquet. That's the kind of look I'm going for. And our envelope cannot take more than that, so it's kind of big. They're kind of big flowers, and so you want to make sure that it'll kind of cover enough surface as well. So that's what I'm doing here. After a quick cleanup, I'm going to just use my heat gun to go ahead and emboss this. I want to just make sure that everything's cured. For me, I like to kind of do things in little steps. So when something is drying, I'm going to move on to another step and kind of just keep the process going. So you don't have to really, just wait and not do anything else. Once my envelope, the flaps have dried, I go ahead and I'm gluing this together so I can work on the back side of the envelope. And I'm going to grab my stencil again and my Distres Crackle paint in translucent, and I'm just going to add some little, texture to this. And it's not perfect. I'm not trying to make this perfect. I'm just adding just some texture to it because I think it's going to look really, really cute. And for summer, it just looks kind of juicy, right? It looks like it's just a lot of fun. Like you want to just grab this and eat it. Don't you? I know I did. So once this is kind of set on the entire back, I'm just adding some additional paint to kind of touch up some areas. And I'm going to set that aside again to let it dry. So that's kind of this thing is like you want to make sure it's dry before you move on and start adding things to the back of your envelope. While that's drying, I'm going to go back in here and use this very little strip. It's about probably 3/4 of an inch wide. And I just stamped hello from that set and embossed it because I want it to go on the bottom of the entire envelope too. So once that's done, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to start setting up my little images. I'm going to use my stapler to staple my florals together, and I'm going to glue this little strip down. It's about not fully a third of the way and kind of towards the bottom there. I need something to anchor the entire envelope. So once I did that, I'm going to kind of figure out what I want my flowers to look like. And then I'm going to use some foam tape. I didn't include this in the supply list because you don't really have to, honestly. I was just being a little bit extra. So this is not mandatory at all. You can definitely just glue this down to your envelope and it looks pretty much the same. Like, trust me, it looks the same. So I go ahead and I'm going to tape that down. And I wanted to just add some color to the inside of this so it's not like just this random white with some splotches on there. So I just added some spiced marmalade to the inside. And then I'm going to grab my oxides and I'm going to just add some drips all the way around the envelope. I'm trying not to get onto the florals. If you want to do this before you add your florals, I highly recommend that. I just forgot to do that. And so I'm going to go back in here, cover my florals as best as I can. And I'm just going to kind of do some drips and some splatters of my oxide inks onto my envelope. It's just for a little bit of extra deliciousness, I don't know, I just think it looks really, really cool because we know oxides look really amazing with Distress spray stain. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm going to flip the envelope on the other side and do the exact same thing. I'm going to go back in here and just add some drips because you want it to be a little bit cohesive. When you fold that flap down, you want to make sure there's the same thing is happening on both sides, right? So I'm just going to go back in here and do that on my envelope. And I get to play a little bit more, I think, on this side because I don't have any florals, but you want to carry on that motif from the other side to this side so it looks very cohesive. And I like to clean in between so that I don't get drips where I don't want them to go. So I'm going to add some heat to this, just going to speed things up for drying. You don't have to do this. I'm impatient. So I like to dry my stuff and get my project moving along, right? I'm not drying this for it to dry all the way. I'm just drying this for the inks to get kind of a little bit set into the paper. And then I like to use my paper towel, as you saw me before, to come back in and just kind of mop up the excess inks that's kind of just like sitting there, not really wanting to dry. So that's what I typically like to do for that. So I'm going to clean my surface one more time so I don't have any inks going on the other side of my envelope as I flip it over. And here we go, guys. Here's our final product. It was super easy to do. I really enjoyed this one. I think it's just a lot of fun. I love the way the translucent paint, Crackle paint, kind of comes through and looks like just little scales or mermaid scales or whatever you want to call it. And I just think with the colors, it just looks super vibrant and fun for a summer project. So I would love to see what you all make. If you have any questions about anything, let me know. But thanks for joining me on this one, you all. It was just a lot of fun to make, and I hope you have fun making this as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.